Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Everyday Game Changers podcast. I am your host, Barion McQueen, and this interview will be no different. We talking to people every day, changing the game in business, community, music, and more. And I have a special guest with me, an author, a motivational speaker, been in this hip hop industry for a very long time, a magazine owner, clothing line. I mean, it ain't nothing she hasn't touched. I don't want to call this a guest. This is family in the building. I want to welcome Lisa Ward. How are you?
Hey, I am blessed. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so honored to be here on your show.
Oh man,
You know, my young son, and seeing him blossom. So I'm honored to be on your show.
If anybody knows me personally, and y'all knew the B to the dot character, I like to call him. People still on the street still call me B dot, and I'm cool with it.
Right.
You
I'm
one
a
of the
victim.
you one of the people though that I really don't even know. Do you remember our introduction?
I know it came from Bravo.
Bravo. Okay, so I gotta give Bravo some credit. Okay. I remember our first meeting was at a Wendy's. That was our first meeting.
Wow. Okay.
I do remember that. But okay, so maybe it was Bravo, one of Bravo's shows, right? He had a show.
I think he
Was
was
you
working
managing
with
him?
you.
You was managing him?
I
Okay.
was Bravo's manager,
There
at the
we
time,
go.
and that's how I met you, because he was working with you.
Perfect.
And y'all had been doing, it was you, P, and Bravo, the three Musketeers.
Shout out Montana SP. Bravo was out here not long ago. We never linked, but he was out here in Hollywood, Florida.
Okay, I know I heard he's doing amazing things. I have a picture of him. Somebody sent me his Ashton. You remember Ashton? I think I'm saying it right. But his boy, who was his manager before me.
Okay.
I think he was before me or after me. And he was doing all the promotions for all the colleges.
Nice.
And he came out. His family got a restaurant, and Bravo came out for the opening. Oh, I literally just missed him like 5 minutes. I left and he came.
Okay.
I was like, oh man, but yeah, he's doing good.
That's good. I have to chop it up. And so I want to talk about the book, right? So I was privy to be able to get to read the book before it came out, and it was stuff I didn't know when I was reading this book, right? So empowered by disadvantages, especially like the dyslexia thing, right? So people hear the dyslexia thing, but can you really break down what it is? Like, I know you probably have a different form of what, like the general dyslexia. Can you break down just the dyslexia term for me, for people who are unaware?
Well, dyslexia, one, can be hereditary.
Okay.
It's definitely hereditary in some cases. It's a learning disability that's a neurobiological origin that affects the brain. Okay. And then dyslexia we have trouble connecting symbols, making words and different letters. So our issue with it represents sound. So the human brain really was never designed for reading. A lot of people don't realize the brain was never built for that. So our ability to bring the two together, which is the brain and the recognizing and familiarizing ourselves with letters and things like that, that's what gets mixed up in the brain. That's the kind of one that Bill Cosby's son has. A lot of people don't realize there's different forms of dyslexia.
Of course.
You can have dyslexia, for math. You can have it with seeing words and letters upside down, which is the most popular one.
Right.
I have a touch of it, but not a main part of it.
Okay.
A lot of people, like I said, the one that most people really understand or remember is, you see things backwards.
Yeah.
But that's not the only one. And, it definitely affects the brain, and it affects the way we interpret things. Okay. So when we do things, we have to, people now, they just realize about maybe 20 years ago, they realized that eye therapy would help with
Mm.
training you to overcome dyslexia,
Hmm.
because it's kind of like when you do speed reading. Your
Okay.
speed reading, you have to watch the ball go fast back and forth. They have you read certain things. They have your brain, your eyes doing a lot of movement. So this way, it kind of one stimulates the brain, the parts of the brains that we don't use, because
Okay.
we only use 10% of the brain.
Mm.
So if you ever like really sit in your house and just sit there and like move your eyes around a lot, you
Mm-hmm.
will feel some stimulation in your head.
Hmm.
So they realized that eye therapy was helping. I actually I was getting ready, I had got accepted to Baruch College, and I went to the University of Obstetrician, where they are one of the best in the nation to test you for dyslexia.
Okay.
And when I went there, I was already there a year. The second year I went, that's when they started introducing me to eye therapy and letting me know, okay, this is why, we're introducing these things to you.
Wow.
And then I realized, okay, wow, this really does work. Also other exercises that help you with when you have dyslexia, people don't realize, when you're writing, I skip lines when I write, because
Mm.
we need that space so we can visualize in a wider frame, so the
Wow.
brain can see it better and intake it to the brain better.
Never knew that. That's dope.
So those are just like little tricks. And definitely the main one that helps with it is reading all the time. I don't
Gotcha.
care if you like to read a comic book, if you like to read about music all the time, whatever it is, just keep reading
Mm-hmm.
and practice. And between that and getting the tutoring and the help that comes with the tools to help you get better, you can get better. And you can overcome dyslexia. You might still have some forms of it here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I've come a long way, as you read the book.
Yeah.
When I went to college, I had, I think, I don't know, sixth, eighth grade reading level, which is, bad to be in college.
Right.
You
Like,
know.
so that's an interesting point. I had a conversation with my wife about I'm so not for school no more now that I'm older.
Right.
People ask me all the time, they're like, oh man, well, where you go to school? And I'm like, I went to University of Delaware for civil engineering. And by my
Hmm.
junior year, I dropped out. I quit.
Hmm.
I didn't need this. And so
Yeah, because you was already working in the field.
I was
I
already in
remember.
the field. So it's just like in that space, I'm going to college to get a job that I already have. So it was just
Right.
like, either I'm going to take a year off to finish and get this degree just to get this piece of paper so they can pay me $10,000 more a year. It didn't make
Hmm.
sense to me. So that aspect of it, it was just like when I looked at people who went to college that was trying to get into the field that I was in, they wouldn't hire nobody out of college. They wanted somebody that
Hmm.
had field experience. So they'll take somebody
Right.
with 5-10 years in the field before the person that just graduated with the degree. And I
Hmm.
looked at that and I'm just like, school to me is a scam. If you know how to go into school to be something that you really need the education, right? You want to be a lawyer,
Hmm.
doctor, anything, a veterinarian, anything along them
Right.
lines. But if you go on to school for, frog leg science or like something that you don't need no degree in, I'm not for school. Like,
Hmm.
it's so much stuff you can learn on YouTube that I'm just like, yo, if you go to YouTube University, you will be
Yes.
fine. Trust me. Like,
Yes.
I got
Yes.
in the photography space. I'm probably one of the most sought after photographers here in Miami. And I learned everything from YouTube. Like, pick the camera up, see what they doing, and then I just add my twist to it. But
Right.
so when I hear the term empowered by disadvantages, right? How
Hmm.
do you I'm big on like catchy names and titles and things like
Right.
that. How do you
Right.
come up with that title? What motivated that title for your book?
Well, the subtitle was really, so I was in bed, I was sleeping, and I always tell people God gave me the title. But the original title that he gave me first was the subtitle, When Your Disadvantages Become Your Advantages.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I have a couple other books that's just like in the library that I always thought. I never thought that I would have a motivational book. Never saw
Gotcha.
that coming.
Gotcha.
So I had other things. So Doc, they let her rest in peace. I got this title, and I went to Doc, and I said, Doc, what do you think of this title? And she said, this is dope. She was very judgmental, very hard. And she was like, you need to write this book. And if you write it, all I want you to do is write it, and I'll take care of the rest. I'll back it. And when she said that, it meant a lot. I didn't really start right away, which is funny. I didn't start right away. But I went to a friend of mine, one of my godson's friends. He was a graphic designer, and I needed a book cover. Some people need certain things to motivate them. I had the book cover before the book was ever done. And when we did the book cover, we did two versions. We did the first version, and it wasn't appealing to us enough marketing wise that we wanted everybody to feel like this book was for everybody and not just the urban cities.
Okay.
So we went back and we touched it, and that's what you got today. And when the guy was doing the graphic design, and he said, you got to come up with the main title, like a big title that stands out on the book. And I said, okay. So I told Doc, and actually she came back and she said, call it Empowered by Disadvantages. And pretty much it made sense, because that's the whole point of the whole book. It's showing people all the disadvantages that they go through, and then what is the advantage in that situation.
Yeah. So just some perspective. So you just told me your reading level was at what when you was in college?
I believe it was about an eighth grade.
Eighth grade.
Eighth
So
grade.
eighth grade.
Might have been lower, but I'll say eighth grade.
So eighth grade reading level, and you in college. What's your thoughts on the whole education system in general?
Me coming from a different generation, we was taught go to college, get a job, and I said I was going to be retired at 25,
Gotcha.
As far as working for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that wasn't God's plan. He got a different plan. And I'm actually, I've had moments where I've done things from music to fashion to now, and it has moments where I'm heavily in it. But I would say probably these last couple years, I'm really in it. Like, I'm traveling and doing different events for it. But my thing, I never saw myself really. I always thought I was going to work for myself. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe. But I went to a college that was co-op. And I went to a special business school because I wanted to be business. I knew that. And they had different bankers that came to talk to us. And this guy came and he told us something, and I remember this and I never forgot it. He said, and now you're talking about, this is in I'm sorry, what was this? Lord, I gotta count. I don't remember what year it was. We're gonna say 2000. No, it was 1990. I think 1993, 1993, 95. He came and he said to me, or to my class, he said, and I was in a 2-year. He said, your associate's degree is a high school diploma, and your bachelor's degree is a associate's degree.
Wow.
When he told me that, I said, I'm in 2 years. I said, I am going to, and at that very point, that semester, I decided to leave and go and apply to Baruch College.
Okay.
And I did get accepted, which was one of the biggest CUNY business schools. People have, got carpet in the school. You like fancy,
Yeah.
So went to that school, got accepted. But unfortunately, due to my health, I had an illness called endometriosis. It would not allow me to stay in school and finish. Like, for my associate's degree, I only had a semester and a half before I can get my degree. So for college, for me, I tell people, not trying to get off your topic, but I tell people, for me, don't go to school to get a degree to get a job. Gotcha. If you want to go to school to get a degree, you're getting that degree for you. forever, whatever you needed, if I ever decided that if I ever get the opportunity to go back to school, I will only be going to school because I'm a Black woman and I'm in a man's business. And sometimes we as women have to deal with extra situations. And sometimes you just want to stop that conversation. And sometimes it takes a piece of paper to do it, on top of your experience.
Of course.
So I just tell people, don't get it for because people tell you need a job, because now after COVID, you definitely can't say a college degree is going to keep you a job, because it doesn't.
No.
So I think that you should get a piece of paper, because that's something that you need to make yourself feel completed and knowledgeable.
I know I speak, like, when I talk to people, a lot of people know me from a lot of different places in my life, right? So like earlier on, a lot of people knew B to the dot, right? So before I transitioned to this focused on business and entrepreneurship and stuff like that, everybody knew me as B to the dot. So and then when I got into the photography space, people knew me as Da Vinci, and so I had all of these different, and I feel like I'm always looking to add to my repertoire of
portfolio
stuff. Yeah, it's just like I don't know why I do it. I just feel like after I accomplish something, I think it's like a drug. Like I'm addicted to accomplishing. Yeah, so I have a real estate license. I don't even use it. I always just wanted to have a real estate license. It was just something that I was just like, you know what? One day, if a family member need to buy a house, or if I want to invest in some properties, I want to have my license. I had no plans to be a realtor, because I can't compete with these women. The women kill a real estate game out here. Out in Miami, you got a nice set on you, pretty. I can't compete with them. I know that, because they got the women. They got the women that's supporting, because it's girl power, and then they got the guys because they look good. So I'm just like, I can't compete with these realtors. I am, but I can't compete with them out here. They killing it. So it's just like, but it was a personal goal. So like, I mean, I got so much stuff. I haven't even found how I'm gonna use all this stuff. I got a real estate license, don't use. I'm a public notary, don't use. Like, it's just stuff. But I just always, I never like starting something and not finishing it.
Okay.
Sometimes I never know what the end goal is, but I just know like, if I got my mind in something, I have to finish it, whatever. Same thing with the book. Like, I wrote the book literally right after I quit my job, and I had the time, and I was like, yo, I already been out of my job 2 months, and I've accomplished nothing. So what did I do? I finished the book. I went and took the test to get the real estate license. I just did all these things I said I couldn't do, because I said I don't have time because I work.
Right.
And so I sat down and I just looked at this list, and I'm like, okay, now what's next? Like, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. But I'm getting a little sidetracked. So like, in this speaking field, what do you want people to take away from? I'm bringing Lisa to one of my events to speak. What do you want the audience to take away from you as a speaker when you go into a space to speak?
Most of all, the first thing I would have to say is to the parents who have children that they might think has some type of learning disability. A lot of parents tend to, oh, not my child.
Right.
They ignore it. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's such a taboo. I had a woman come to me recently, and she said, I think my son has autism. And, I really don't want nobody to, know. And, and I'm like, okay, why? And so I want people to know that because you have a learning disability, let it be autism, dyslexia, anything, that doesn't mean that you can't be a successful person. Actually, and I talk about that in the book, most people who are entrepreneurs and millionaires have some type of learning disability. So I want them to I want them to walk away knowing that it doesn't matter what your learning disability is, you still can be successful. Two, I want people to come there and realize that there's a new way to think.
Right.
The purpose of the book was to make sure, you know, when you're going through things that's bad and you're going through things that's devastating, just like going through COVID, so many people lost their job. And I'm pretty sure, you know, people like, why? You know, why is this happening to me? I go to church, I do all these things. Why am I in this situation? And they get stuck there. And sometimes people can't pull themselves out of it, you know. Even if you homeless, doesn't mean that you can't figure out, you know, how to get out of a situation.
Right.
So I want to change the thinking magnitude of people. I want them to see that there's a light at the tunnel. I want them to realize that, okay, I'm in this situation. What's the lesson in this situation?
Right.
What was the lesson? And what was I supposed to gain out of this situation?
Right.
And that's what I really want people to walk away when they come and speak to me.
That's dope. I think, like, for me, so I was always a straight A student in school, from elementary school, middle school, high school. I didn't start seeing like B's until I got to college, because you really had to do some work, right? My problem with education is I never thought that I was the smartest. I just had a great memory. So when I go to school,
a lot of people like that.
And I think this maybe is from music, right? Like, I just always remember lyrics and rhymes. And so as I get older and I think about, my mom's like, man, you know, you one of the smartest people I know. And I'm like, Mom, for one, I do read a lot, right? But as a kid, I always wanted to sound smart. So I used to go into the encyclopedia. I'm sure these kids don't know what encyclopedia is, right? I used to go into the encyclopedia and look for big words to go use them on my mom, like, because I knew she didn't know what they meant, right? But when it comes to like school, I used to have such a great memory that I would study for tests the night before, memorize it all, get an A on the test, and I could not retain any of the information. So if you ask me next week about what was on that test, I was screwed. And I got through, I would say, life and my whole education just like that. I took Spanish class since 5th grade all the way through college. Still don't know Spanish. Passed the class, got the test, and I'm like, as I get older, I'm just like really not a fan of education the way it's been done for so long, right?
And now they've changed it on us.
I wouldn't even know now. I'm sure it's all filler, just busy work to keep make it convenient for the teachers, right? But it's just like, for me, I'm like, I can't. My sister, she wants to be an entrepreneur. So it's hard for me to sell this to my mom. Like, look, y'all need to listen to her. She really wants to be an entrepreneur. It's not for everybody. Everybody don't have it. Without great leaders and great workers, then who's going to work for these entrepreneurs? And I want to be clear about that. Like, everybody, I don't want everybody to be an entrepreneur. Does everybody have the potential? Of course. But it's a certain crazy involved with being an entrepreneur that I think every entrepreneur that really goes out on a limb and does this thing, it's a certain crazy about them that people say it's because I'm a Gemini. I don't think Geminis have nothing to do with it, but it's a certain level of insanity that goes with, like, look, I'm just going to do this for me. Any of these people's stories that you hear from these billionaires and millionaires, there's always some kind of similarity of crazy in their story. And mine was no different. Like, I really was affected by COVID because I left my job to start a marketing company. And when COVID hit, I lost every client. I was doing almost $10,000 a month just starting out, and lost all of that because they like, look, Barion, as a small business owner, we can't pay for marketing like at the moment. Like, so, and I'm just like, what do I tell my wife? I done left my job. I done did all of these things. But it's like you said, what's the lesson in this loss, right? I just sat back and I was like, you know, to have the skill set and the ability to pivot into something else was just like, yo, it was just, God just put that in my lap and was like, here's something else. And I just completely shifted my focus. We started doing real estate photography, and I never looked back at the brand castle at all, from the marketing and PR stuff. Like, I don't even do that for people no more. Like, I just completely shifted, and it's just like, everybody always sees the winning aspect, the highlight reel, the final destination, and they don't see all of the behind the scenes stuff that it took to get there. And I think that's super important. So, like, talk to me about, so you somebody that's diagnosed with a dyslexia. Could you?
Yes, I'm legally dyslexic.
Like, how do you see this as, like, what can you say to that person that struggles with that? And you're a published author, so that's like the oxymoron of having a learning disability. What do you say to that person that's like, yo, I got this, I'm autistic, they say I'm never going to be this? What kind of words of encouragement can you give that person about, no limits on what they can do?
You have, like you said, there's something in entrepreneurs that is a drive that we have, a killer instinct. We have this, we're not going to stop. Like, if you tell us we can't do something, or something, or you're never going to be something, that's just going to make us purposely trigger. Yeah, that's our trigger. I remember, my teacher telling me I would never go to college. Said I would never go to college, never end up being anything. And it's funny because that same teacher had to come to my office and deal with me as administrator. So, I laughed at that, and he never said anything. I looked at him, he looked at me. We never really communicated in the hallways, but
he knew.
and the respect that I got from the principal and the directors and the board, was what can you say to somebody?
Yeah.
So what I tell people who, now with technology, yes, I'm dyslexic and I wrote a book. Thank God for technology. My phone and my iPad was my best friend. I actually spoke a lot of some of my chapters. I spoke into my iPad and let it write it, and then I go back and I can read it and correct whatever I need to correct.
Nice.
Which is crazy because we can't spell, but we can read.
Right.
But you have to have a hunger, and I would tell them that if it's something that you want to do, one, you should never be ashamed. And I had to learn that because I never used to always tell people I was dyslexic. This is something I've learned in the last 15 years of knowing me.
Right.
A supervisor told me, if you don't tell people, they're either going to think you're dumb or you're playing. And they said, just tell them, and it's up to them to deal with it. And then once I learned the rights and the laws of a dyslexic person, or a person with a learning disability, the ADA laws, it gave me more information, and it gave me the position to be like, well, you need to follow these things because this is what I need to do this job. And if you don't, there is an ADA rule that says you have to do certain things.
Right.
So I will tell that person they have to, one, be okay, not be ashamed. Make sure that you ask for help when you need help. Don't be too prideful, and to the point where, hey, because you're older, you don't want to ask a young person, or you're a young person, you don't want to ask an older person. Just ask for help and do research. And with research and help, you can do anything. I look at Russell Simmons. He's one of my, people I look up to. Russell Simmons says, I'm a millionaire, I'm who I am because of the people around me.
Right.
He said, I don't know how to do some of this stuff. He said, but a good CEO is a person who hires the right people to work for him.
Of course. That's dope.
So that would be my advice to somebody.
So with so many different, this would be probably the longest interview, right? Because I didn't even get into, I never know the story of how you got into the, even in the music business. We may have to do a part 2 because it's so much, but I really want to stay focused on the book. Yeah, so many different directions we can go. What's your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in 5 years now with all of this information now?
In 5 years, I see. Well, they say speaking with the tongue, so I'm going to do it this way. In 5 years, I see the soundtrack. I see the movie of this book. I see a second book. And then I see me retiring from working.
Nice.
And actually, going to different schools and actually really educating them on, the steps that's needed for dyslexic kids, just so these kids could, kids, especially kids who's in special ed,
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kids that really need it. But in 5 years, I see, the second book, the movie soundtrack, and hopefully one of the songs, my main goal, and I see that hopefully by the end of the year, I'm hoping, is one of the songs from the soundtrack to be get an award for BET. That's my ultimate goal.
I like it. See, y'all see what we talk about, man. Everyday people that's changing the game, man. This episode was no different. I want to thank you, Lisa, for
Thank you for
sharing your
having me.
story. Definitely make sure y'all get the book, Empowered by Your Disadvantages. And we'll look for the soundtrack. When can we expect that? You thinking?
Hopefully, you can have us back. The single, we're working on the main song. The album's called Empowered.
Okay.
And the main song is called Empowered. So they're in the studio literally as we spoke. You got a sneak peek. So
yes,
we're finishing up that song. So we're gonna do singles right now.
Okay.
Until we get the budget to complete everything. But we're doing hopefully a Kickstarter, and hopefully y'all can support us.
Okay.
Next month, we're trying to raise $20,000 to do the soundtrack and the movie. Okay. The soundtrack I'm doing slowly, but the movie is what we really need the budget for. So we can we have the whole crew already, the producer, the writer. She loves the book and she, has decided to do it. So now we're just trying to raise the money for that.
Nice, definitely. Thank you, guys. You have now been tuned in for another episode of the Everyday Game Changers. Everyday people changing the game in business, community, music, and more. And today's episode was no different. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all your streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. I am your host, Barion McQueen. Thank you, Lisa, again.
Thank you. Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate it.
We will definitely be in touch. Thank you.